It's a moment that could change everything. A racist cop, proud of his prejudices, squares off with a black woman FBI agent, one who seems out of place in his world. As their paths collide, the tension is palpable, with harsh words flying between them. He doesn't know it yet, but he's about to make the worst mistake of his career. This isn't just any officer, and this isn't just any agent. She's not here to take orders. She's in charge. The shocking twist. She's actually leading the investigation into his own department. With every word, his arrogance is digging him deeper. And what he doesn't realize is that his world is about to crumble. Will he walk away unscathed, or will his actions lead to his downfall? Stay tuned as we unravel the shocking truth behind this explosive encounter. For years, Officer Williams had built his reputation on a foundation of arrogance and ignorance. He treated everyone around him with disdain, especially anyone who didn't look like him. He had no problem tossing around slurs or dismissing those who challenged his outdated views. But when Special Agent Taylor walked into the precinct that morning, something shifted in the air. She wasn't just another agent, she was a force. Tall, confident, and unyielding, she carried herself like someone who had seen it all, and then some. The kind of person who didn't back down, no matter the odds. What Williams didn't know was that she had been watching his every move, tracking his involvement in a series of questionable actions. His name had already been flagged, and his department was under investigation for corruption. She was there for one reason, to bring justice. But could she handle a man who thought he was untouchable? Williams could feel his confidence slipping the moment Taylor walked into the room. She wasn't intimidated by him. If anything, it was the other way around. Her words cut through the air, and for a moment, there was silence. Williams stared at her, the weight of his past actions starting to sink in. He knew things were about to escalate. He could feel it in the way his colleagues had started to avoid eye contact, the way his phone had gone silent after hours of ringing. Something wasn't right. But before he could gather his thoughts, Taylor spoke again, her voice low and steady. "You think you're untouchable, but trust me, you're not. And when this is over, you'll wish you never crossed me." Williams stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. He was losing control. "You don't scare me, Taylor," he spat, but his words lacked the force they once had. He knew the walls were closing in, and he could feel his career slipping through his fingers. The door to the office creaked open, and for a split second, both of them froze. Another officer, a junior cop who had been with the department for only a few months, stepped inside. He was shaking, visibly nervous. Taylor turned to him, her expression unreadable. "I just heard something," the officer stammered, barely able to meet her gaze. "There's talk, big talk, you should." Before he could finish, Williams shot him a glare that silenced him instantly. But Taylor's focus shifted, sensing that something was unfolding beyond their confrontation. She knew that if she could just hold her ground for a little longer, everything would fall into place. But the clock was ticking, and with every passing second, the stakes grew higher. The air felt thick, like a spark was about to ignite. Taylor didn't back down, but neither did Williams. Their fates, intertwined by the weight of corruption and truth, hung in the balance. Neither knew that in mere moments, the consequences of their actions would come crashing down on them in a way neither could predict. The tension in the room grew unbearable as the young officer stood frozen, unsure whether to speak or flee. Taylor kept her eyes on him, sensing he had more to say but wasn't sure if he could trust her. Her instincts told her this was a turning point, and as the seconds dragged on, the atmosphere shifted. Something was coming, something none of them were prepared for. Then, the door slammed open with a force that startled everyone. The precinct captain, a large, imposing figure, walked in, his face grim. Behind him, another officer, Sergeant Daniels, trailed quietly, looking almost nervous. The captain's presence immediately shifted the energy in the room, and Williams's face hardened. This was unexpected, but what was worse, it was dangerous. "Agent Taylor," the captain said, his voice low and cold. "I think we need to have a little chat. Alone." There was no warmth in his tone, and it was clear this wasn't a request. He stepped further into the room, deliberately blocking the door, while Daniels lingered in the background, his eyes darting nervously between Taylor and Williams. Taylor felt her stomach drop, sensing the sudden shift. She knew the captain wasn't just here for a casual conversation. In the world of law enforcement, higher-ups didn't show up unless things were about to get ugly. She took a breath, keeping her cool. She wasn't about to let this intimidate her, not when everything she had worked for was so close to coming to light. "Is there a problem, Captain?" she asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced. The captain's lips curled into a thin smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. He glanced at Williams, who stood frozen, his arms crossed defensively. "There's a big problem, Agent. See, I've been hearing some very disturbing rumors about your little investigation, and I'm starting to think there's more to your case than you're letting on. Are you really sure you want to keep digging, especially when there are bigger forces involved?" Williams's gaze flicked nervously toward the captain, and for the first time his bravado faltered. Taylor could see the cracks in his armor. He wasn't the untouchable officer he'd once believed himself to be. But what caught her off guard was the look in the captain's eyes. It wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. One that could unravel everything she had been working toward. "Bigger forces," Taylor repeated, her pulse quickening. "What exactly do you mean?" The captain stepped closer, his voice dropping even lower. "You're in over your head, Taylor. You think this department's just about bad cops. No, it's bigger than that. We're talking about the system, powerful people who don't like having their secrets exposed. You really want to cross that line." A chill ran down her spine. She had suspected corruption ran deep, but this was something else entirely. If what the captain was implying was true, this wasn't just about Williams or a handful of rogue officers. There were far more dangerous people involved, people who controlled things from the shadows, and Taylor was now standing right in the middle of it. Her mind raced, trying to piece everything together. She had to make a choice. Push forward and risk everything, or back down and let them win. But just as she opened her mouth to respond, a soft beat broke the silence, the sound of her phone vibrating on the table. Taylor grabbed it instinctively, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw the message. It was a brief, cryptic note from her team. Asterisk, check your 6. Backup on standby. Don't trust anyone. Asterisk. She felt the ground shift beneath her. They knew something was coming, and it wasn't just about the investigation anymore, it was about survival. As the captain's menacing presence loomed closer, the walls began to close in around her. The stakes had just gotten higher. This was no longer just about right and wrong, it was about making it out alive. The air in the room was thick with tension, but everything inside Taylor screamed one truth: it was time to act. The message from her team hadn't just been a warning, it was a lifeline. Without missing a beat, she slid her phone back into her pocket and stood taller, her back straight, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm not afraid of you," she said, locking eyes with the captain, "and I'm not backing down." The captain's smile faded. He could see she wasn't going to be intimidated. The sound of a car screeching outside caught his attention, but it was too late. The sound of boots pounding down the hallway made it clear that Taylor's backup was already inside. Suddenly, the door burst open, and several of Taylor's fellow agents stormed into the room, weapons drawn. But the most shocking sight wasn't just their presence, it was the unexpected face leading them. Sergeant Daniels, the officer who had been silently standing by, stepped forward, his gun raised at the captain. "You're under arrest," Daniels said, his voice steady. The captain's eyes widened in disbelief as Daniels' words sank in. For a moment, there was pure silence, and then chaos erupted. Taylor's heart raced, but she didn't flinch. This was it, the moment she had been fighting for. The evidence was clear now. The captain had been the mastermind behind the corruption, pulling strings in the shadows, manipulating everything from illegal deals to protecting rogue officers like Williams. The investigation had led her right to him, and now the truth was out. Williams, looking completely shell-shocked, stepped back, his hands trembling. He was frozen, not sure if he should run or try to fight. His career had ended, but he didn't even know how or when the walls had closed in around him. He glanced at the captain, but there was no help coming now. "Daniels," Taylor said, her voice commanding. "Take the captain and Williams into custody.